What up, y'all? Welcome back to Shadowland Universes, and welcome back to another episode of Shadowland Offerings. I am DC Fago Guy. This is Robbie. This is Gage. We are your hosts, and welcome back. And in this episode, here we are to feed, to feast, to feed you guys, to tell you guys, to talk to you guys, to just talk, to just feed. This is weird. We are going to be talking all about the Feeding of Neculai, the fifth oracle, which I think I can speak for all of us here. This album is abso-fucking-lutely amazing. This album has been on constant rotation. I think the other day was the first day since it dropped that I didn't listen to it. And I'm like, whoa. And the only reason I didn't listen to it was because I was listening to the other oracles to just really kind of feel how I feel about the placement where I would want to rank the Feeding of Neculai. And I left that listening session no closer to deciding where I want to throw Neculai at as far as my favorite oracles go.
Rankings.
So
yeah,
rankings. Yeah, what would you get ready to say, Gage?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna add on to the trying to listen to them and rank them. Every time I do that, I'm like, no, I still don't have a definitive list. They're all great. Like
I don't even want to have a definitive list. I don't think, because the more I try to do that and think about it, I'm like, because I start my thought process, I'm like, well, Shadowland maybe is closer to the bottom because it's less figured out, and then I listen to it and I'm like, nah, it's still number one, and they're all number one.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just different. Like, yeah, Parasuva is probably my actual favorite of those records, I would say. Book of Time close behind it, but then like if I'm listening to Blood of Izu, goes crazy, and I'm just like, oh wait, no, this is just as good. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I think something that makes the series so special is that they all are uniquely great at being that record.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like you listen to an album and then you're kind of like, this is the one. Then you listen to the next one, you're like, no, this is the one.
Yeah,
exactly.
And since I've become a fan, I've went from Parasuva being my favorite to Izu being my favorite to Book of Time. I don't think I can confidently say I don't think I've ever given Shadowland the rank of my favorite, but I don't want to make that seem like it's not good or it's not liked at all, because like when I'm talking favorite, it's neck and neck right there with how amazing I love it. It's just there's certain itches that each of the other albums hit, and it's Loke knowing where he wants to try to experiment next that gets that itch. I think Shadowland was such the basis of the idea that there was so much still to kind of, tiptoe into. And I think in each of the other albums after that, it's kind of like, you know what, let's just dive in.
We talked about it a little bit, just for those at home listening. We talk about this stuff every day in a Discord channel of just the three of us. So we've had a lot of these conversations, and one thing we were kind of talking about was the similarities between like the oracles and Joker's cards from ICP, and how Shadowland and Carnival of Carnage kind of have that shared thing where they're figuring out what the thing is as they're making it. So like Shadowland coming right off of, Loke being the Mission Infect guy, the horrorcore guy. There's more of that previous style in Shadowland because it's transitionary in a way. It's him going like, okay, I want to make music that sounds like this. Here are the tools I have at my disposal right now because I've been working with them for years, and kind of forging something new with old tools in a way. And also kind of to compare those two records again, they're both kind of setting like location based in a way where like Shadowland and the Carnival, blah, blah, blah. They're, setting the scene for where the rest are going to take place. And then by the time you get to the next record in both series, they're like, oh, we actually know what we're doing here a little bit more and have figured it out more. And I think that's what makes those records special. And I think it's also what makes them not quite at the tier of the others a little bit, because there's still some figuring out to do. But I think that's also what makes them unique and cool in a way that the others aren't.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the charm comes from, because it was that we know what we want to do. We kind of know what this is. The execution's not quite there, but by the time Ringmaster and Book of Time, we know what this is. We're locked in.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something special about those first ones that are just the set dressing to move forward. And without those, you don't have how good the rest of them come. So there's something very special and unique about the first one.
Also, in a way, if you think about it, like, can you imagine like a fan of like, oh, I love The House 2 and Mission Infect, hearing Book of Time out of nowhere? It'd be like, what the fuck is this? This isn't the same guy. You know what I mean? So like having that bridge with an album like Shadowland, I think makes it a super important record in that pantheon, because it takes your hand and brings you in if you're already into the other shit, you know?
Yeah, and I can kind of confirm that, because
you were there.
I was there, yeah, and I was like, okay, so, and this is around like Camellia Addict's time, and I was like, okay, like rap, and those were the albums, were the first Mission Infect, the Jackie Beats, The House, and it's like, okay, I know what this is, and then Shadowland comes out, I'm like, okay, I still know what this guy is, but he's doing something special and unique. So it's like, what is happening here? I'm very intrigued by this. So it is a good like bridging of what an Oracle is and what Loki was beforehand, and that is like the perfect middle ground and like transition, which is perfect. That's the first track of Shadowland. It all, like, in a meta sense, it really just works out that way.
Right. And yeah, any more thoughts on Shadowland? I guess we really went in on that. I've been thinking about all these records a lot. I think we all have. So,
absolutely. And that's what's cool about them.
Well, I think that's been part of the process, I think, for feeding for Neculai, is just kind of getting it into the bigger world of the oracles. So it's, for me, some of my playthroughs when Neculai is kind of naturally Eyes of Parasuva into Neculai, but then just kind of randomly, I was like, Neculai feels very Blood of Izu-ish, and what I mean by that is metal. And then I kind of just went like, but there is an alternate version of Book of Time that exists, and it's metal. So I listened to it once with Book of Time Alternate Dimension going into Neculai, and Neculai is such a culmination of the previous oracles, that you can listen to it kind of right after one of the previous oracles. It's got the dark overtone kind of vibe, I feel, that Shadowland has. It really kind of takes you into some of the experimental levels that Book of Time went. Obviously, it's metal like fucking Izu is. And just with Parasuva, I feel like the way it transitions beautifully into the record, we've got a great transition from Right going into Begin. This Neculai is just, I'm coming to a loss of words, because it's just like such a culmination of the previous oracles. It's everything I think I was expecting, but also not expecting, in a very good way. And I think I talked to you guys, and I know I had told other people that I part of me wondered where the direction for Neculai was going to go, and a part of me was wondering if it was going to have more of like a Neon Sermon EDM kind of vibe to it. And when it started, and it wasn't, there's not even an ounce of that. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, my expectation was wrong, but in a great way. And no diss to EDM, but I was trying to prepare myself for how kind of contrast it was going to be, which is kind of a theme I think the oracles also have, is standing out from one another. So when it went in that direction, and it just was such a combination of the previous four, I was like, this is great.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say, so this last week on the Circle, Loki did a live stream. I'm trying to think the name of the series, and I can't. It's like Construction Chamber or something like that. Regardless,
yeah.
He went in and
live with
Yeah, he went in with the Neculai album and the stems and the tracks and kind of pulled them apart and played different pieces and stuff. And the producer that he works with on these records, Einstein or Dave, was in the chat kind of giving his 2 cents. And it made it make sense to me, DC, exactly what you're talking about how these records are all so of a piece, because Dave Einstein, Eyen Stein, had worked on Parasuva, Blood of Izu, and the Book of Time alternate dimension version. So these records are basically this guy Dave and Loke just kind of putting their heads together and sending things back and forth. And, you know, Einstein will do a skeleton of a track or whatever, and then Loki will play some pianos and guitars or whatever on it and then send it back. And it's like a collaborative production process in writing these songs. So it makes sense that it feels like a culmination of it, because it's like, okay, these guys are like a handful of records in now, and they like kind of know what they're making together, almost in the way we were talking about with like the Shadowland being the bridge from one thing to the next. That Book of Time alternate dimension is sort of their version of that bridge from, you know, the previous oracles into the future ones of like, oh, okay, we're working together, this is what our sounds sound like together, blah blah blah. And learning that made it kind of click into place a little bit in my brain of like, oh, okay, this is a team effort between just 2 dudes just going fucking in on this shit.
They locked back in. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Which for me was that's pretty cool to learn that, because, you know, I always felt like the alternate dimension was a way to test what that sound would be like for an oracle, because then Izu came out was like full metal. So yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
We haven't talked on the show at all, right? About the process, about the rollout of the website and the rearranging of the track. Like, have we touched on that? I don't think we've done an episode since that was happening.
No, we can kind
of, we recorded previously before that rolled out. We were like a week away from it.
Yeah, so, we were just speculating at that point. We didn't really know anything.
So let's talk through, you know, everything that happened, how we got from knowing there was an album. Well, the last time we talked, there was a teaser trailer. That's what it was. Yeah. So from there, what has happened? Who wants to guide us through this?
It was Halloween night, I believe. After the teaser trailer, I think was like a week or 2 before Halloween, and so midnight going into November 1st, Neculai arrived on the circle.
And he had, for really quick, he had kind of teased a little bit with some posts that said kind of mysterious sentences like the circle decides, or like
the circle will decide.
That is what I have pulled up here real quick. There was a message sent out, said, this evening we are given our first glimpse of the official album cover along with the following message. This is when the artwork was fully revealed. It said, in 3 nights I will expect you. You will arrive as truth bearers. Each of you will walk these halls alone, though others walk beside you. 10 chambers await. The order in which you enter them is yours to decide. There is no wrong sequence, only the one that reflects what you carry. My hounds already know your names. They have walked with you longer than you realize. When you arrive, choose your path carefully. The ends keep will remember the order of your truth. Bring only what is honest. Leave what is hollow at the gate. Neculai.
Interesting. And I haven't read that or thought about the language of it since that came out.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to kind of revisit that exact phrasing after the fact. So Gage, now that we've heard that and all the mystery shit and fucking it's funny, like it's so nerdy, but like that just like makes me excited to hear.
Yeah,
and then that's cool, like the lore. But yeah, so we get that mysterious ass message. Which when I got that, I was like, I started to put the pieces together a little bit, and that like 10 chambers, and I think we had already seen maybe a track list. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think the track list came
on the circle.
So, yeah,
and so I was like, okay, choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I was thinking, but there was no way to know that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and it
Gage, go in
kind
on
of-
what happened
yeah.
from there.
So then it drops on the circle, and DC, and whether you brought up that language specifically because that's so cool. So it released on the circle. You got a link to its own little browser, and it gave you like you had to enter your email to confirm that you were in the circle. It gave you a message. I feel like it was individual to the person, and then you got the track list, and the beginning was locked in, and Bargain with the Stars was locked in, and in between, you get to pick the track list that you want.
Yeah.
So, and depending on where everything was locked in, by I think it was like a week.
Yeah, it was. I think it was roughly 7 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Each
it was.
track counted as a vote. So each member of the circle got to arrange Neculai how they felt that it sounded good to them or they wanted it to go. However, their reasoning was behind it. And then after that, it was all tallied up, and that became the final track list.
Yeah. And so what was that experience like for all of us? I mean, we can go one by one. DC, why don't you lead off? How did that feel when you're just given this website with arrows up and down and the instructions to kind of fuck with it?
The initial thought going into it for me was to just leave it alone and listen to it how it was. And so the first 2 times I did just that. I listened to it with the track list that Loke kind of set forth for us. But the more that I looked at that language, and the reason that I had that picture handy was it just kept kind of speaking to me. And this album felt like the whole concept of it was there is no set track list, that it's kind of what you feed into it. And that's kind of the whole vibe of the album. And I know we kind of, when we were listening to it and going through this whole process, we all kind of, I think, struggled with that a little bit. And I remember making statements, and I think you guys made statements as well, as even if the track list changed and the CD and the final version came out with a different track list than the one we felt comfortable with, that we kind of wanted to still go back and change it. And I think that that's just kind of the wording that stuck out to me and that I carry even to this day, is that it says the order in which you enter them is yours to decide. The 10 chambers are the 10 tracks. And when it said that you enter them in whatever order you want, I held on to that through the entire process, to the point that I'm like, okay, there is no wrong track list order at all. Obviously, Begin has to begin it, and then Bargain with the Stars has to close it. But everything else is so fluid. And for everyone who's listened to it, you kind of know that listening to it. There's no like blending of the tracks. They all kind of leave off on a nice fade out. They all kind of start with a good fade in, to a point that you could, to this point in this day, still rearrange it. And, just got what I felt was comfortable. And then after doing that, I just kind of had this feeling like, I don't know, I want to go back and listen to it how it was. So I did that a few times. And then when the album was set and the track list changed, like I didn't know really what to think. I didn't know where to really kind of go from there, because I had just kind of adjusted myself to the track list Loke set forth. But now listening to it in the order that the circle got to choose, it's almost like it was meant to be. It was willed into existence. So that for me has been like my biggest experience with being able to rearrange it. And I know the one that I came up with that I liked, and I kind of locked it in. Definitely, it was different than the one Loke put, and it was different than the one that we ended up with. And I don't even know if I still have that order set somewhere, but it was one of the craziest experiences I feel like I've had going into an album, just being able to more or less choose that fate. And yeah, I just love the language of we go through that alone, but also others are beside us. It was so fucking wild, and it just such a fun experience.
Yeah. So a couple things that I'll jump right into. The fade outs and fade ins that you mentioned. I had asked about that because when I first listened to the album on the website, it sounded like, well, it was new. I had never heard any of those songs before, so that seemed like how it should sound. You know what I mean? And then when I heard the finished version, I'll get back to my jumbling of things. But when I first heard the finalized, the one that's out in the world now on streaming and whatnot, it felt like it flowed pretty smooth. But I wanted to rearrange a playlist for myself of the originally intended version, that Low Kid originally posted. And then that kind of sounded awkward to me. So I asked him, I was like, did you remix some of this stuff so that it flowed better with this running order? And he straight up said he did nothing of the sort. The files are the exact same files, just rearranged, because he intended, as opposed to other oracles that flowed into each other in a intentional way, this one he cut them and faded them and all that very intentionally so that this could be the way that it went, which I thought was just really cool, because it means this was not necessarily like a last minute, like, I don't know, this seems like a fun idea or whatever. It was like, this is intentionally part of the makeup of this record, even down to the, how things are ended or began or whatever, it's like intentionally with that in mind. So I thought that was cool. I think of the three of us, I've had the hardest time wrapping my head around it. We've talked about it a bunch, and it's just because of my own hangups, in that, like, in my head I go like, well, I want to hear the original artistic, intention for the album, which would have been the sequence he gave us, with Again as track 2 and Feeding is track 9, whatever. But then I have to then think about, like, oh, but the game of it with the resequencing is also the artist's intention. And then that breaks my brain a little bit, because then I go like, wait, which one? What am I supposed to believe? But that's just me being weird and obsessive about things like that. I do think the new version flows as well, if not better, than the original one did, which I think is really cool. And I think that the version I had, locked in for myself, which we can all maybe post these somewhere or something if we can find, I think we screenshot it or explain them in our group chat. But my version, I think track 2 was Runaway, Into the Void. I think I kept the Feeding second to last, because I think there's a drama to that track that feels earned through the journey of the tracks before it. I still really like it going right before Bargain with the Stars, but I also really like it as track 2. So it's been a really interesting, it's one of the most interesting rollouts of a record I can think of just across music for me, because there's such a, you process music differently when you're thinking about how to structure it, I guess. I never go into any other albums thinking about that. I just go like, this is the album, I'm hearing it, and then kind of process it as a piece of music. It was interesting to have to process it as 10 pieces of music that I got to kind of look at the lyrics as I typed them out, listening, and looked at the music, the palette of like guitars and violins and this and that, and like kind of try to like create a narrative for myself using all those tools. That's just not a thing I ever do. I don't like rearrange albums ever, because I just don't. I don't know. Do other people do that? But yeah, I don't know. It was a really interesting process and really cool. Gage, how did this go for you?
I mean, I think a little more similar to your situation of like having that struggle of like, I don't know which list is the one. But I think I listened to it through once and then immediately was like, okay, this is like it. I went from, I'm just going to sit and listen to it and let it just run its course, like I did with every other Oracle or album or whatnot. I immediately was like, oh, there's a game to this. So I started organizing and switching everything, and started to gravitate to like a specific way that I really liked it. And I think I rearranged things, very quickly locked into what I liked. And my final list that I made actually was pretty close to what the collective circle and list would end up being. I actually I have 3 playlists for Neculai. I have the original, mine, and then what the actual like official circle decided thing ended up being. So I have that all saved, and I'll just randomly put one of them on. And at first, I got used to mine, and then I saw the circles, and I agree with what you said, Robbie, about how like the feeding feels like it all like kind of like comes together and culminates. So I had that at the end, but I had again right after it, because again kind of felt like the feeding and again feel like the same side, like 2 sides to the same coin, where it kind of like brings the elements and themes of the album to a front and really breaks down what it was all about. And again was at the beginning originally as Loki had it, and then the feeding was at the end, and that made sense. But then I also kind of like them back to back to kind of complement each other before it ends with Bargain with the Stars. So having the feeding on the final list at the front kind of feels awkward, but otherwise like it flows together really well, but also it doesn't. Like it's such a weird album that it feels good for any track to be anywhere, and then sometimes it doesn't. So like with me having 3 different playlists, I'll just swap them back and forth, and it always makes sense somehow. Like it's such an interesting, weird way to consume music. And I mean, oracles are special to me, and this made Neculai so unique even amongst them and special, because it was like, okay, I can make it my own in a way and like live in it how it makes sense to my brain, but I can also like, okay, I kind of appreciate the way that Loki originally had it. Okay, I kind of appreciate the way that everybody kind of looked at it, and it's just, I've never had anything like it, and it's very cool.
Totally.
And special because of that, where I think it would have been special and important like the other albums, but because it had this element to it, it's just a step above everything else in a unique way that I can't, like, it's hard to quantify because nothing else has been made for me to look at it like that.
Totally. It's very modern, I think, as an approach. Like, I feel like having the audience kind of playlist out what they think it should be is like a very modern streaming era way to approach album rollout in general, which I think is really cool. Hayley Williams actually did like a very similar thing from Paramore, the singer. Like recently she put out a website with just 18 MP3s on it and said, download these, arrange them how you want, let me know what your version is, and I'll think about that when I'm finalizing, the official version of it. So I wonder if low-key was aware of that and kind of got, that got some wheels turning, or if it was just like happenstance they both did that. Mm-hmm. But it seems like a very forward-thinking model for how to release music in the 2020s, because like I feel like it's very easy. I feel like a version of this that a lot of people do that I don't like at all is listening to something once and going, I like this song, I like this song, I like this song. These other ones didn't make an impression on me, dump them. And I hate that because it's like, it so devalues the art and the album experience for me to hear that people do that. And so a version of it like this, which is like, okay, take all the tracks, keep all the tracks, you fucking maniac. But you kind of can decide where they should be or what works the best. I think it gives people that kind of gamified involvement, interactive thing that people need with short attention spans these days. But it also makes you think more deeply about the final product, which I think is needed in this day and age for people to have the attention span to take an album in over and over again and to really, process it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It definitely made me go into the listening process more feeling out the tracks than anything. more so than normal. Yeah, and the thing about doing this experiment with reorganizing, I thought the idea stemmed from Blood Echoes, that little adventure game he put out earlier this year, because it had a soundtrack. And going into this experience, I was expecting it to be more like that, where we were going to kind of pick like a chamber we wanted to go to, and then that would play the song, and it would have like cool artwork. And then, it would bring us back to the page where we picked the next chamber. That was something I was expecting in my head. So when I got there, I was like, oh, okay. So we just rearrange it, then play it. It was definitely different, but that was kind of what I thought the idea came from, was Blood Echoes. So mentally, just going into it, that's what I was doing. I was, okay, I'm in this castle going into these chambers, and that's just kind of the way I went to mentally with them.
And then outside of the rollout, unless anyone has any like super pressing thoughts about that further, we should probably just get into the fucking record. DC, I know you've had a lot of thoughts about, the messages and the meanings and the music here and how it's affected you. Like, you want to go in on that a little bit?
Yeah, this album, and I listened to it several weeks before ever even reaching the point where I finally reached out to Loke. I didn't want to be awkward and weird. And when I watched Roanbone do his ranking and he talked about Neculai dropping at a perfect time and him needing it, I was like, I've been feeling the exact same fucking way. And so I finally reached out to Loke and just thanked him for the album, because this album has dropped at such an important time for me. And I think that that's kind of been a common thread for a lot of people. This album is pain. It's, emotion. And that's what you're giving to Neculai. That's what he's feeding on. And just the whole concept of this album being an album for you to go to and listen to when you're feeling certain pains. Bargain with the Stars. I previously had talked in a previous episode of Offerings here, where I talked about Becoming New off of Algorithm being such a beautiful song, and I kind of dropped the bomb on you guys about having a terminally ill family member. Bargain with the Stars got me over the hump and got me to cry more than once. Not cry, but tear up for sure. The line where he says, "We died with you that day," that's the part that gets me. And like talking about it now, I'm getting chills. My father-in-law is the only father figure I've ever had, and he's got cancer. He just went off chemo like a few months ago. And the week after Neculai dropped, they actually met, and he's on hospice now. Now, he can still get up and move. He's just on hospice to where he doesn't go visit the doctor anymore. Like, they come and give him the medicine he needs. So he's still moving and he's still able to get up and move. But we're at the process now of, we know sooner than later he's going to die. And Bargain with the Stars was just such a hit. In the same week of this all happening, my mother-in-law ended up in the hospital, and she's been down there for a month now. The day that we're meeting with hospice, my mom texts me and says she's going to have surgery. So it's just like everything's kind of hitting at once. And this album has been there through it all. And there's so much power in these tracks. And I think one of the things about this album that has just really stood out for me to the other ones is just kind of the level of emotion that you pick up in, and it's throughout the other oracles, but there's a lot of it here, and there's a lot of power ballads. And I specifically made sure to look up what a power ballad was, because I didn't want to label what this was. And it's a lot of powerful vocals that usually have an emotion involved in it, so when you think about the Feeding, when you think about Divide, when you think about The Void, when you think about Bargain with the Stars, there's so many power ballads in this album, and there's just so much emotion, and it's everything I needed that I didn't realize I did, because I'm going through the processes of the reality it's hit, but I'm somebody that usually, after it's hit, after it's happened, after I've lost somebody, that's usually when it hits the hardest. And I'm able to feel that now more before it's happened, because of Neculai. So this album has just been everything that I've needed. And, you know, kind of even previous emotions I've gone through. Last year, I had a falling out with my siblings. And my brother, ironically, it had a lot to do with Loke. And I won't dive into all that, but there was a situation with him that he was not doing appropriate things, and it was brought to my attention. And when he was asking me what was going on, why did this just happen? And I'm like, well, I seen what happened. So like, I think, you know, and just from that response, my brother was like, well, I guess you're dead to me. And I haven't talked to him since. So this was October of last year. So listening to the track again, it definitely spoke to me in a different way than I think other people have interpreted it. And, you know, Gage, you and I, we've talked about this. The line where familiar poison that you've grown to like, to you felt like that was like referring to alcohol or some kind of a substance. And to me, I felt that as like, if my brother reaches back out and wants to, make amends, he's a familiar poison that, you know, I mean, we grew up together. We were juggalos together. But this is not the first time he's acted like this towards me, and it's definitely not something that I deserve. So letting him back in and trying to make amends or, you know, reestablish that relationship would be a familiar poison, but he is a poison that's just not good for me. Mm-hmm. So again, has spoken to me in a way where it's like, you know, the song's about here you are again alone. And to me, this song is trying to tell me that it's okay, and just acknowledge that, like, he's somebody that I'll cross paths with probably in another life. And again, has definitely been a standout one too, just from that experience as well. Kind of what I've taken from it and, you know, used to heal in a way, you know. But
that's why I wanted to cut to you for that, because like I knew that's deeper on it than I had anything to say. So like I wanted to lead with that, because I think this is an album that is so ripe for that kind of emotion, and you can tell it comes from stuff that, you know, low-key is dealing with in his own life. But something I like about the Oracles is that they are spoken lyrically. You know, the language of it is very open-ended but still very specific. So like I know what Bargain with the Stars is about. It's about loss, it's about grieving, it's about, you know, it's something about like doing these albums in the style that they're in, kind of the rock, you know, epic ballads, takes away some of the specificity that comes with rap music, that where it would be like, I'm sending this song out to this person and blah, 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 and like, here's some details. It's like, there's an open-endedness to it that I think is hitting a lot of people. And even just seeing the comments on that one specific song, Bargain with the Stars, like, it makes me think of my good friend Logan, or, you know, SON to the music world, who lost his best friend this year in a very tragic, very sudden way. And we've all kind of, as a community within Legion Realm, been dealing with that, you know, and I'm, you know, I wasn't as close to Andrew Rida, who passed, but watching my friend go through that, you know, and just knowing that that's affecting a whole bunch of people that I care about. That's all I could think about with this song, was just, you know, my good friend Logan, how he's doing, how this year has been for him. And then you go into people that you've lost in the past, but that's the most immediate hit. And it's, and I know that he's listening to this record because he's a big low-key fan as well. And you know, and I know that it's doing a lot for him. So I think that's really cool. And hearing your story about that, and I don't know, it's just like, I think people look at this little genre, or what they think it is, where it's like, you know, juggalo music or whatever, which I wouldn't even say that now I'm like, this falls into that category, but there's such a preconceived notion of kind of what this is and how deep it is and how deep it isn't and how stupid it is or whatever. And I think having some kind of these kind of bonding experiences on something so universal and heavy, it kind of shows how good at this low-key is. Yeah, I don't know, Gage, say some stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bonding thing. I mean, that's why the three of us are here. I mean, that's what brought us together. And I think that is, the power of this scene and this music, even if this like stylistically falls out of that. But I mean, bringing people together and bringing your own meaning from it, I think, is so important. And I think we've talked about how like the oracles almost feel like most music is, but like autobiographical. But Neculai feels the most in a way. Like there's a lot of songs that feel just very raw and honest, and it feels like for me it's a lot about dealing with loss, but also like breaking out of cycles. Like again, it literally feels like a song of here we are again, stuck with this. We want to go to these coping mechanisms. We want to, go about our ways of dealing with whatever we're dealing with. And I think the Feeding was a very powerful track for me, where
Totally.
it talks about, there's a lot of language of a past version of myself that is what keeps me going, while another version of myself is also what's keeping me from going. Where
Mhm.
there's like this conflict of like different versions of yourself, of I'm my own enemy and also my greatest ally at the same time, which is something that I've always struggled with. And what Neculai kind of speaks to for me is breaking out of cycles and being like, I am what holds me back, but I'm also what makes me go forward, and trying to find a balance of that. Or even like knowing what your worth is, and moving away from people that are bad for you. Like like a similar thing with DC, with you and your brother. The song Divide spoke to me a lot of, I was in a pretty bad relationships in the past, and just being stuck with people who were not who they seemed to be, or were bad for me. And the lines of, you're good at pretend, but you can't pretend to be yourself. So keep on pretending, and I'm just going to go forward and find myself, basically, is what that song really spoke to. And like a very like just something liberating about that song, that just really spoke to me of, like I don't want to be around these people because they're not who they are, and I want to be who I am, so I'm going to move forward. And that song definitely, like, just the album as a whole, but those songs in particular definitely feel like trying to break out of cycles while dealing with whatever it is externally that is making it hard to break out of the internal cycles. But I mean, musically, it's a powerful album. I really like the power ballads. I was so full of those. It's one of those songs, the albums. There's so many moments where you're just like, like internally, like feeling it in a really good way. And I feel like Icy resonated with me really powerfully because it has a lot of those moments, and Neculai is so many of those moments where it's just like you really feel it, kind of like channeling the music in a way.
And in the music, like to go back to the live stream he did the other day a little bit, there was so much in there that you can't just clock listening to it, casually, because it'll be like, oh, there's this synth line that mirrors the vocal melody here that's buried 7 layers under guitars and drums. And or like he played there's a guitar solo on one of the songs, I can't think of which one it is now, and then he played like a piano that perfectly mirrors the guitar solo, and so it gives it that extra oomph. And just like watching that and seeing, I think one of the tracks was like 120 something layers of stuff that had, or different lines of things, and it's like seeing how much goes into these. They said that the first song they had worked on, which I think was The Void, they started in early 2021. So this album's been in the works for almost 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, and it is because there's all those things to peel back, and like, you know, hearing him talk about, you know, him and this guy Einstein or Dave sending the tracks back and forth. It's like, oh, it's very clear that you guys add and add and add and add, or and then take some things away and then add new things to these tracks for years at a time, and be like, you know, just tinker with them until they're kind of perfect. So to see that process is like, oh, I really have an extra appreciation for like just the musicality that goes into it outside of the songwriting and stuff. I mean, like certain tracks like the hook on The Void or Runaway, I mean, those are like hooks, you know, like hits.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great choruses and just good song structure and stuff in here that I think is really some of the best he's done, you know. So
There's
I don't
so
know.
many earworms.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Like,
Go for sure.
I don't really listen to music outside of work. Just because it, you know, out of convenience, I listen to music while I'm doing something at work, but it's a little harder when I'm at home focusing on, you know, the daily.
Totally.
But even like this song, like this album, I Broke My Rule. Like, I'm like, man, I want to hear The Void, or, oh man, I really want to hear Rattle the Dust right now. Just like,
Oh yeah,
scratch that itch and listen to the songs. There's so much of that, like, aside from like the meaning and things you can pull from it, it just sounds so good to listen to.
yeah. And yeah, these songs are stuck in my head constantly.
All
man.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Just little bits too, little like, you know, I was just going to start singing on here, but that's behind a whole different paywall. But yeah, certain little like melody flourishes and things that I'm just like, yeah, these are going to stick with me for a long, long time. And Parasuva was similar, but it feels like his songwriting is just getting better and better as far as that kind of thing goes.
It's a constant level up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else we really wanted to get into or touch on? We're going at close to an hour.
I mean, I think we could go on and on and on about
Yeah,
this.
That's what I'm like. We could do 2, or we could get to rapping.
Yeah, I mean, if our Discord conversations are, you know, a testament, we could just keep talking about this, and we will definitely through text. But I mean, if we wanted to, I mean, these songs, it's hard to like pick, but like just like at a baseline right now, just from the gut, like what are your favorite songs? Like top 2 or 3?
I'm pulling up the track list to take a look here. Shadowland.
I didn't even bring my CD.
I'm huge into Heaven Fell. I like that one a lot. It's got a creepy, slow energy I like a lot. Some of the vocal cadences and phrasings really remind me of Maynard James Keenan from Tool and A Perfect Circle, especially the Perfect Circle stuff. I think that's cool. Divide, I love. The back half of that is so interesting, where it kind of almost like disintegrates or something into just this spoken word piece that I think has a lot. For me, because I don't know what it's about, but for me, it has a lot to say about the modern state of like American politics and culture war kind of stuff, about, you know, people thinking they're progressing but not doing anything, and kind of fighting with no real answers and things. I don't know. It kind of, I thought that was a really cool element to kind of include into such a personal album. And I have no clue if it's even intentional. That's just what I pulled from it. But that back half where the song does seem to like almost catch on fire and fall apart and then turn into just this like creepy narration. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And the feeding is a huge one for me. I think that, especially, I don't want to say especially. I was going to say especially when it was at the end, but I still feel the same way about it. It just is almost like a Tarantino like backwards way, where like in the original running order where it was second to last, you kind of earn that catharsis by working through all the other stuff, and then you get to this point, like a breaking point, where it's like, all right, enough. Here's plain spoken, all the shit that I'm fucking at a wall with, and you know, we've been through all the little journeys here, and here's my head exploded out at the canvas. I like it in that version, and I also like it in the same way but backwards, starting the album and going like, we're starting with the frustration and the catharsis of that, and then we're working backwards through the emotions of that. So I don't know, that's I mean, it's basically the title track, so it makes sense that it would be a pivotal moment, but that's a huge one for me. DC?
I feel like with the feeding too, like I really liked it towards the end, but when I heard it as the second track, because I really had no intention to hear it in the second, to really kind of lead off the album, but it feels like it really is the start of the process for sure. Standout songs for me, this is really hard, and I just want to say I love that Heaven Fell is like a favorite track of yours or a standout track for you. It was one of the ones in my first few listens where I had to grow with it because it was such a slowdown to the other tracks. But like you said, it's kind of like eerie, and there's like this hauntingness to it that I wasn't able to pick up on until I had both of my earbuds in and was able to really feel the environment that track gives. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I love that you love that track. Because I think a lot of people will probably maybe overlook it or not acknowledge it like that. But for me, it's definitely, and this is so tough. Again, I have to, because of how it's personally related for me. Bargain with the Stars, I have to, because it gave me a moment of healing that I really needed. But outside of that, I'm torn between Rattle the Dust, The Feeding, and The Void. I almost want to give it to The Void because you guys saw, and then I posted it, the like meme that I made out of Roan. That fucking track, The Void, the way that this track builds all the way throughout, you have all of these moments. And there's a meme that I made that you guys seen, but nobody else has, where it's the Vince McMahon meme, where there's different points where he's getting excited. And then the final point of him being like, is the violin at the end. This song is just so great, the way it builds. And I was not expecting that violin, the way that it came in. Like I expected to hear like a chorus and then just that's the end of it. But like we essentially got another bridge out of the track with that violin, and it's so great. And there's an element to that track that for years I always wondered if Loke uses like programmed instruments or if he has like people he works with. And there's a certain high pitched squeal you hear that violin do that I don't think a programmed violin would make. That was like a moment of validation for me. That's like, okay, there are real instruments here being recorded. And it's just a great track.
Really quick, on that note, speaking of the live stream, he did talk about some of that stuff, and the violin is a specific person that he uses for violins. There's actually a choir vocal on Bargain with the Stars that's a real 30-piece choir from upstate New York that he uses occasionally. Apparently it's extremely expensive, so he doesn't use them that often because you have to get 30 people in a room with sheet music and all this stuff. But like there's real there are some program stuff, like I mean some of the pianos and stuff are obviously not like a grand piano, but there is a lot of analog real instrumentation going into these records for sure.
There's a lot of both.
Yeah.
And I just want to go on the record and say there's absolutely nothing wrong with programmed instruments. Fear Factory has an album called The Industrialist that's programmed drums, and a lot of their fans hate that it's programmed, but to me it sounds great. I think it's just as good. Live instruments give it a little bit more heart, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with programmed instruments at all.
No, I mean we're coming from a place of, I mean, in this world of music, largely like rap bass. I mean that's all samples and drum pads and stuff. So no, there's nothing wrong with it at all. But I do think it's cool that there's a meshing of both. I think that's it makes it unique.
Yeah, that elevates it.
So for sure, I want to throw The Void in there then because it's just such a great track. And if I was to give the title to my favorite track to a song, it's going to either be Again or definitely The Void, just because of how epic that song builds and then just delivers.
So good. And then I'll go with mine. Divide, definitely, just like sound wise, the way musically it sounds, and then like the personal meaning and message I derive from it. And then the way I like the way that, I mean, Robbie already talked about the way it's kind of like disassembles and kind of like turns into this like very creepy moment with the mysterious stranger. And I kind of got some of the similar vibes, and maybe not about politics, but of him just like speaking on the humanity of just, we're just going in circles, which is kind of a cool way to like work it back to the, you know, kind of the theming that I got from the album of just cycles and going in circles and trying to break out of it and progress and make personal progress. Divide. I think I'll probably go with Heaven Fell. I was with DC where that was kind of a slow burner for me, but usually when a song or an album even, like there's always something that's kind of off, but it's intriguing to my brain, so I want to keep going back to it. Like those challenging songs are my favorite. And Heaven Fell, Blood of Ice, you had some moments where it kind of slows down and gets kind of creepy and weird with Wake Your Demons and Forsaken. And I like when Luke does stuff like that. And even his cover of
Sad But True.
Yeah, where it just kind of like gets weird and slows down and vibey a little bit.
Those are my favorite parts of those records. I love that kind of shit.
Yeah. So Heaven Fell, and that's another one of those like unexpected earworms where I just like think about the melody in my head. And then the last one, it's hard. All the songs are bangers, but I think Rattle the Dust for me, that's another one where it's just so good. And do you guys know Lacuna Coil at all? The intro to, I think it's Rattle the Dust, kind of reminds me of something that they would do on like their Karma Code albums with like the female vocals matching with like, the heavy music. I was just like, oh, this reminds me of that other band that was really cool.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Rattle the Dust is one of those songs that I feel like if it got radio play, it would be a hit.
Oh yeah,
it's good.
There's a couple of those on here for sure. I think that and The Void I have similar feelings about, where it's just like, oh, these hooks could go on radio, like rock radio.
Fuck yeah.
Those like I feel like Neculai is interesting where like you could probably give it to just like a fan of metal, and they like even more so than maybe some of the other oracles. If like you were just like, hey, you like hard music, take this and get them into Loki through that.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great album. Just
fantastic.
We kind of started with trying to say what our favorites were, and I mean right now Neculai is my favorite just because it's so new and I'm still with it, but I think it's going to be definitely a standout even continuing through into the series. So yeah.
Oh, any final thoughts or final words about this record before we call it a night?
If you've somehow made it to this channel and listened to this and you haven't listened to Neculai, fucking go and do it. You're fucking up if you're sleeping on this album. Yeah.
Big time.
Absolutely. Yep. Oracles are where it's at, and Neculai being the newest, it's amazing.
And just to kind of put a bow on the year, maybe, the fact that we got Love, which is, you know, a really aggressive fuck you rap album.
Yeah.
Release 4, which is kind of a summary of everything Loki is capable of, and on all great. Algorithm, which is its own weird world. Algorithm Chaos Edition, which is its own weird world. And then to wrap it up with this, what a year, man. I mean, like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about that in the Discord a little bit, where it's just like you get a little bit of everything, and it's like some of the best of all of the stuff he's done, where, you know, Love is that spiritual successor to American Monster and LGV and Follow Me, and it's just so good. And I'd say Release 4 is probably the best one of the Release series, and something completely different with Algorithm. And then this is like the perfect way to just top it all off. We've been eating good, and now we're getting fed on by Neculai, so it works out.
We are.
Loki is a dude that I think could have fan bases in different genres that don't even like the other stuff he does. You know what I mean? Like, I could see a fan of Love not giving a shit about Algorithm or Neculai, or I could see a Neculai fan thinking Love is just a kind of music they don't like at all, kind of thing. But
I won't put them on blast, but I had somebody who forgot that Love came out this year because Algorithm and Neculai was such an overshadowing project that this person prefers from Loke. This is the
Totally.
kind of
And I
music this
think
person wants to make.
I think that's really cool because like as someone who likes all of it, it's extremely rewarding.
Oh yeah.
But it's cool that like
Yeah.
each type of person in that little pocket got something this year. You know,
Yeah.
if you just like the hard raps, you got Love. You got some of the stuff on Release 4. If you don't like that stuff at all, you got 2 records that are great. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that is special and unique and man, what a year.
Yeah, all of Loki's superpowers all on blast this year.
Yeah.
And
right.
I want to put a bow on your bow because
Bow me
this
up.
year was this year was a big year for thematical albums because the year started out in March with The Bastard Son, King Umbra, kind of representing reincarnation and, you know, how to break through the cycle of repeating life. You had The Knot, which is the perspective of what comes after death. If there is no God, there is no heaven, there's no hell. And now you have the Feeding of Neculai, which is the perspective of the living who are dealing with the pain that could come from Umbra or the Knot. To me, it's such a cherry on top when I think about that, you know, especially with Umbra and the Knot having so many similarities. And now we have an album that is about dealing with the pain, and the fucking closing track that's so epic, really kind of the bargaining of, you know, that loss that you felt from, you know, losing somebody to death is Jesus Christ. What a year. This year's going to go down great.
Yeah, I didn't think about
history
that.
is a great
Glad you brought that up too. It is, you know, a triple threat of completely unrelated, but also somehow very related, like big concept.
Very similar for sure.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, what do you think, audience? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell. All the YouTube stuff. Even though a lot of people are watching this on the circle, but hey, you know, you know.
So yeah, just tell us down below what you guys thought about Neculai and how great is that fucking album to you. And if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it, grab you a physical copy, and then come back and tell us what you thought about it.
Tell us your 3 favorite songs, your favorite oracle, your favorite color. Who cares? Just tell us about
favorite color ice cream. And I'm not saying flavor, color. Why? Because that's how it came out of my mouth. You like brown ice cream? Fucking great.
Yeah.
Bye.
On that note.
Peace.